You're listening to Investify, preaching financial independence and assisting investors to achieve a more flexible and free lifestyle through smart financial planning and real estate investing. If leaving the corporate world and jumping into this thriving industry is what you desire, tune in and listen to stories of like-minded individuals who made the leap to financial independence. Equip yourself with the right tips and tricks to start your real estate journey, making active or passive ventures that are highly profitable and rewarding. Here are your hosts, Craig Kurlop and Ziana McIntyre.
What's going on, everybody? You are listening to Investify. My name is Craig Kurlop, aka the Fi Guy, and I'm here with my co-host Ziana McIntyre. Ziana, Z, where you at? Z, we got Jason Drees on the show. You are about to miss out. He's dropping bombs right now. If you're listening to this, Z, I'm so upset that you're missing this one because I feel like you in particular would really love it. And you've probably heard about him in his coaching program, right? He's Brandon Turner's coach. He was my coach for a little bit. And he's one of a kind in his field. And we talked about some things that you probably haven't heard him talk about before, right? His origin story, about the businesses he started before the coaching and how he made that shift. And how he decided that, hey, he could coach somebody, right? And he was actually not doing as well as some of his clients. And so, like, what is a coach to coach a client that's not doing as well as him, right? There could be some imposter syndrome there. But you have to have that frame shift, right? Or that mindset shift that we'll talk about in this episode. So there's like LeBron James or Tom Brady, right? These guys are the best at their craft. And they still have coaches. They have coaches because they can't see, where LeBron James' elbow is when he's shooting a shot or how quickly Brady can throw the ball out, right? But his coaches can see that, they can analyze that, and they can give slight recommendations because although they're not as good at them at execution, they know what perfection looks like, and they can help these guys get to perfect. And that's where Jason Drees was at with his clients that maybe weren't doing as good as him, but could still go ahead and coach them. And guess what, guys? We got Jason Drees on the show. Jason Drees, welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, Craig. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. So great to have you on. I don't even know if you knew this, but I was one of your coaching clients there for like a year or two. And yeah, you've got some really good stuff. You're a phenomenal businessman, and I'm so excited to kind of jump on and hear your little bit unique journey. And so,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I recognize the name. I'm like, Craig, I know Craig. He's been around.
Yeah. Go Abundance, JDC, Bigger Pockets. I'm sure we have a lot of circles that kind of clash. And so why don't we just take it back to the beginning, right? Take it back to when did you first have that shift from W-2 employee to entrepreneur? Like, take us back to that date and time, and we'll go from there.
When my mind shifted, or when I actually made the shift?
Let's talk when your mind shifted. You got to make your mind shift first, and then you got to take action, right? That's always the first step.
Yeah, I think it happened. I don't remember exactly, but it was around 2003 or 2004, and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, it kind of changed my life. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, I was, enjoying the weekends, and I was working for the weekends, mm-hmm. and I was the only, there was no entrepreneurs in my family. So everybody worked. I had a good job and had fun. And then when I read that book, I haven't had weekends off since.
Yeah.
I'm trying to unwind from that book now, but that's funny.
But
that's when it started.
The book's all about working harder for a couple of years to have the rest of your life off. But then here we are, working something you're more passionate about, and you're always on, always off kind of thing. And so what were you doing prior to that shift? Was it like some sort of banking, or you remind me of like a finance guy? Sales. Okay.
Technology sales. I worked in telecom, and I was a manufacturer sales rep for a technology company. So okay. I would do phone system demos. I'd literally drive around in my car to small businesses and demo phone systems.
Okay. Nice. And so, you're driving around your car, demoing phone systems, sedentary job, which doesn't sound great. And so you read Rich Dad Poor Dad in 03, 04, and that's what made that's what made you make that shift. And so how long did it take you from reading Rich Dad Poor Dad to actually take action?
Well, I started taking action, to really making money like close to 15 years. But it was I started researching, like I tried an internet business that didn't really work. I just kind of, tried that. I tried read about real estate investing. I read a bunch of Dolph DeRue's book. Do you remember Dolph DeRue?
No.
He's this Australian guy who has talked a lot about real estate investing. And I went to a conference once, but I never actually took any action. So the real estate route didn't actually go anywhere. But it was in late 2006 when my partner, well, not my partner, he was my engineer. I was the field sales guy. He was the field engineer. He was into auto racing, and we kind of stumbled across the idea to make a product better than something else out there. So I founded, we started the initial ideas of 986 Incorporated in 2006 and 2007, really started in 2008, but that's really when we started this company that manufactured race car driver cooling suits.
That is so cool, literally. Before we get into that, right, I want to kind of talk about like why did you not go towards real estate, right? Like Rich Dad Poor Dad is so real estate heavy and he encourages it so much. Yeah. Was it like the down payments, or was it just...
It was like I had a lot of debt and I'm like, okay, we need to buy a house, and we own one house right now, but we need to get our finances in place to do it. So that was kind of the idea.
Okay. So you didn't have your finances in a row. So getting a mortgage might have been tough, but like it was 06. Couldn't anybody get a mortgage in 06?
I didn't know that,
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I just assumed that like you had to qualify for the mortgage with your money and down payment. So I was like, not really sure how else to do that.
Yeah. Looking back on that, maybe you did dodge a bullet not getting in 06. You might have been paying for that for 10 years or so later.
Possibly.
But so I guess let's talk a little bit about this race car cooling suit. And so your buddy was into race cars, and you felt that there was a need for this, right? And so what is the first step? And like, I mean, you're a first time business owner. It feels like a pretty large endeavor. You're not starting a lawn care company or, like that's a pretty easy thing. Like, how do you get into this?
Yeah. Well, we basically started by solving a problem. Like he was into auto racing, and there's a product on the market called a cool shirt. And I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's basically this cotton shirt and they have tubes sewn on top of it, right? And they still sell those today. And there's race car drivers driving $1 million race cars wearing a cotton shirt with plastic tubes sewn on it. So, and then they basically plug it into ice chest, and the ice lasts about 30 minutes, and then they're just pumping hot water through that basically. So somewhere along the way, we came up with the idea of using Peltier thermoelectric coolers to cool water instead of ice, and making an ice-free system. And I also had the idea of making a shirt that instead of using tubes, used like molded camelback bladders, so there was no pressure points and a lot more surface area. And that's kind of how we started, right?
Okay. So the whole shirt was kind of like a camelback, and you just had cold water. Did you have it plugged in, or like I got to imagine?
So the primary product was uses those little, like, if you have an ice chest that you plug into the cigarette lighter, right?
Yeah.
They use this thing called a Peltier thermoelectric cooler. It's this little bitty wafer, and when you run a DC current through it, one side gets hot and one side gets cold. Right.
Okay.
So it's a solid state cooling device. The problem is they're extremely inefficient. And they use a ton of power. So we were developing prototypes constantly to try to cool the water using those devices. And the shirt would plug into that. The shirt was amazing. It blew everybody away. But then we ran into new problems in that we were pulling so much more heat off the driver, we were overpowering the system, right? Like a race car. And it was mostly like sports cars, right? So it was like Mustangs, BMWs, Porsches. Those were the Continental series that we were in. And like the bottom of the car would after they would do like a couple warm-up laps or a session, come back, park the car, and after 5 minutes, the bottom of the car is still like 150 degrees inside. Jeez. The heat in there is just insane. So it was like this never-ending battle of trying to overcome heat. So.
Yeah. Okay. So you discovered a problem. You've got a solution to that problem, and so like you had the idea. What was that prototype? Like, how do you go ahead and like just create that shirt? Like, what is the first step? Do you have to go get a patent? Is your buddy the engineer and he's kind of making everything happen?
Yeah, well, the shirt didn't come first. The shirt came second. The first was the liquid cooler, which was the goal to replace ice chests, and everybody would buy that. Little did I know that I was putting a lot of time and money into a market that didn't have that very big of an audience. So that's a different, very different business lesson. But my partner volunteered to work the 25 hours of Thunderhill, which is a 25-hour race in Northern California, north of Sacramento, and he met a guy there that was into racing and ended up being our first investor. And literally, without much effort, I raised like $250,000, just like that.
Wow.
Because he had a lot of money. His wife's money. Actually, I ended up getting sued later by his ex-wife, because of that. But that's a different part of the story. But we got that chunk of money, and then we used that for development and kind of there. But we were never making enough money to quit our job. So basically, we ran this business on the side for about 4 or 5 years before it fizzled out. Yeah.
Okay. And so did you give this guy, this guy was an investor. Did you give him a portion of the company? Was it an equity stake or was it a debt position?
It was equity. Yeah.
Equity. Okay. Very cool. And so you did this for 4 or 5 years. What was, at the end of 4 or 5 years, what was your revenue at? Were you profitable?
Yeah. I knew very little about running businesses back then. And we were, and looking back, we were out of cycle. We were like trying to sell when in the wrong phase. We should have went slower. We should have done different things. But, we did about 300,000 and 350 in sales over a couple of years. And we ran out of cash in like 2012. We ran out of money. We had taken some debt addition because he basically said, you can take, we said we need more money. And he's like, okay, well, I'll loan you money. And we're like, we don't want to pay it back. And he's like, I'll never call him. So we took notes that he said he gave a verbal agreement that he would never call. And then the business ran out of money. We ended up getting into a deal with Momo. These investors actually bought Momo, that Italian racing company. So Momo was purchased by investors in like 2013, and we worked with them over about a year to acquire our intellectual property and basically turn it into Momo driver cooling, which is was a really great opportunity. A lot of interesting experiences in going through the transaction of a business. And after that, they literally just dropped the integration and let it fall and didn't do anything. So it basically fizzled out. And then the primary investor got divorced from his wife, who made all the money, and threw us under the bus in the divorce settlement. And she came after us, and we got sued.
Oh my gosh! So was there any sort of exit for you that was successful? Like, did you make $1 out of that exit, or?
No. I got sued and declared bankruptcy.
Oh, so you declared bankruptcy after your first business. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are obviously, someone obviously, you were kind of green to running a business. You jumped right in, which I think is an amazing way to do it. Why don't you tell us some of the top 2 things that you learned that you would recommend to someone that's just starting a business now to not do?
Number 1, be very careful who you do business with. Unfortunately, everybody seems to learn that lesson. Looking back, the money was coming too easy. We didn't really get along. I don't think that person is of the highest integrity. So I'm not surprised that he went back on his word. And, and I can see the divorce settlement, like, here, go after these guys. And he told us that he would never do that. So it was really pay attention to who you're doing business with, but keep going, right? Keep going. Because what actually happened is when I started the second year of 986 in like 2010 is when I hired a Tony Robbins coach to help me. And the Tony Robbins coach that I started to change my life, and literally it did. And like I think it was 2012. I had gone to Unleash the Power Within, and I went to Date with Destiny, and I was on a call, and my coach asked me, have you ever thought about becoming a coach? And at this time, I was like working a tech day job. I was doing 986 on the side, trying to get through this thing, and then also interested in coaching. And basically, he asked me that question, and I felt like I got struck by lightning. It was like, psh, and like my life changed in that moment with that one question. And I realized I'm going to become a coach. So as I started to get more and more into coaching, interested in coaching, that was the end of 2012, but literally in early 2013, I got invited to Tony Robbins coach training program.
Wow,
So 986, the process led me into coaching. And the interesting thing is at the end, we get into this lawsuit, and he and I we don't make a ton of money. We're maybe each making $100,000 with families, and we're trying to survive. And we're getting sued by a rabid attorney who overbills, basically. Like our attorney, like we had to file a motion for excessive discovery requests.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah.
Because he was billing by the hour and she wasn't paying attention, right? And he's basically threw this frivolous lawsuit at us by looking at our expenses, saying, "Oh, you're going to airports and airfare and stuff like that." I'm like, "Yes, we're flying to racetracks in Florida constantly." So unfortunately, in lawsuits, it doesn't matter who's right; you have to defend yourself, right? So, what actually happened is we needed to come up with money. So he actually worked in channel marketing at his tech company. I was actually out of tech sales at that time in 2013. I was at Tony Robbins starting to coach. And what he did is he directed some of the channel marketing development funds to his reseller channel to do coaching workshops for me so I could deliver those workshops and we could get that money to pay our legal fees.
Wow. So Tony Robbins is helping you do this?
No. Like I was working for Tony Robbins, but I had my own coaching business on the side. So I'm like, hey, sell my coaching business and we'll use that. And I would do these coaching workshops for these partners and then that money would pay and we'd use that. And that's actually how my coaching speaking business started.
Wow. What a genesis, right? I mean, it starts from the almost like the failure and kind of the sputtering and the big, I mean, it was a cash suck for you guys, right? Like the lawsuit, how much did that end up costing you over the course of the few years that you were in it?
Well, it was like 30 grand and it was a lot of, and also in the foundation, in that process, when I'm in my office trying to be a Tony Robbins peak state coach, I'm getting emails and texts from my attorney having panic attacks because I can barely pay anything. And at one point we were on food assistance from the state. And then I'm literally, that's when and in that process is when I developed my belief change process, which is the foundation of frame shifting. It happened as me processing the reaction to the lawsuit from the previous business failure.
Wow. Yeah. Isn't it funny how it's funny how sometimes like you have to hit rock bottom to see to have clarity as to like where you're going to go. And that's just kind of like you're pulling that arrow back to rock bottom just to get launched. Right. And now look at you.
Yeah.
And so I guess like talk to us about, you mentioned this frame shifting. Like what is frame shifting? What does that mean? And if somebody is in a rut, how can they get out of it using it?
Well, that's different. So we all know mindset's important, right? But mindset's hard to change. Like what is mindset, right? The simplest way to think about mindset is a point of view, right? It's a perspective. And Craig, you have points of view based on your life experience, right? So you grew up and where you grew up and you went to school and you had the jobs and families and friends, and that creates your mindset, right? And my mindset is different because mine is different from yours. Now you operate just like all of us do within the confines of our mindset. It's literally a computer that your brain is your brain is a computer that's cataloging everything you've done prior to now. So every step you take forward is basically compared to what you did, right? And that's why people do the same thing over and over again. So mindset is really the biggest limiting factor in what people do because most people just don't think amazing, crazy, impossible things are possible. So they end up playing at the same level over and over again. Now, changing mindset is challenging. Tony Robbins figured out a way where you like make your move and you tap your face and you scream and you do stuff like that. I have figured out the level above mindset that creates mindset, which is called frame. And I believe it's the vibrational frequency of us as a being, right? Because our body is made of atoms, it's pure energy. So, and when I discovered framing about 2.5 years ago, I basically realized that you can shift frames in a second. And the second you shift frame, the mindset shifts automatically. So mindset literally starts to become irrelevant so that as long as you align your frame with what you want, the mindset will show up. That's why I've developed what's called like alignment coaching compared to results coaching. Because results-based coaching, when I was at Tony Robbins results-based coach, I talked to a new real estate investor and I say, what are you doing? He's like, I'm struggling with money. And I'm like, what do you need to do? He's like, I need to cold call. I'm like, go cold call. And he goes, I don't like to cold call. I'm like, why? He goes, because I don't like rejection. And I would say, what kind of man are you? Put your hands on. Like, and I would crank the screws to force. Results coaching is forcing misaligned action, right? So, and then you get average results with that. So what I figured out to do is instead of coaching on action, I coach people on their mental environment.
Okay.
Because when you get the mental environment in a line, the action's automatic.
Right.
And it works much better.
Okay. Keep going with that. Right. And so this is so common in this business, right? Especially, if you're a new investor and you're looking for deals and you're cold calling for sale by owners, you're cold calling these listings, right? And the sellers are saying, no, I don't want to work with you, et cetera, et cetera. It sucks. Like I've gone through with that. And so what do I do? What's the difference? That's great,
right? Well, because the So you've got like the action you take, right?
Mhm.
And it comes from the mindset. So action, mindset, your thoughts create your action,
Mhm.
and your frame creates your thoughts, right?
Yep.
So for example, you can be in a happy frame, which will create a happy mindset and happy actions. You could
Mhm.
also be in a sad frame, which creates sad thoughts and sad actions, right?
Mhm.
You can be in a mindset of I'm going to be successful in real estate investing because I'm not going to stop until I do, which will generate the aligned actions. Or you can be operating in the version of I don't know if it'll work. Because what happens for most people is their focus is on the what I'm going to call the micro level, which is
Mhm.
the specific strategy they're running right now. And because they are not 100% certain on how to hit the target, their lack of certainty at the micro level is seeping into their global level,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, and what actually matters is the global level. So, what I do is I help people align their global frame, and then the mindset at this level will just figure itself out.
I don't think people talk about this frame. Mindset is such a buzzword, right? But you don't hear this
Yeah,
word frame very much at all. And I think honestly, I'm just learning about it right now from you.
yeah.
And so frame is like it's like a step deeper. And so right, is that's what it sounds like. And so
It
like
is.
if
Yeah.
how do you recognize if I'm in a bad frame or if I'm
Well, you
in
can
like a
feel it.
sad frame? Yeah.
You feel it. You feel it because your emotions are your indicators of alignment.
Hmm.
So if you're so there's so if you're feeling positive emotions, you're in alignment. If you're feeling negative emotions, you're not in alignment. If you're feeling flow, you're in alignment. If you're feeling resistance, you're not.
Okay. And
Right?
so how do you make that switch?
Switch of what?
How do I get switched if I keep having bad days, right? Woe is
Yeah.
me, negative alignment. It's almost like, let's say it's a habit of mine to be negative. How do I
Yeah.
create? Well, I think recognizing it is probably the first step, right? But
Yes.
also, how do I like get out of that mindset and get out of the habit of being in that mindset?
That's a great question. Nobody I know is talking about frame shifting. I'm the first
Hmm.
person I know talking about this.
Hmm.
Um, because basically everybody's living right here. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, if you come up here, it's different.
Hmm.
So the first step to actually starting to make that, because changing mindset from the level of mindset is hard, right?
Hmm.
But because the mindset, think about it like this: the mindset where you may be sad every day or frustrated is coming from a frame that's misaligned, right? So
Hmm.
we're trying to change the frame from the mindset level, but that's actually backwards because frame creates mindset, not the other way around. So
Right.
once you understand the foundation of this, you can then say, well, I'm feeling negative emotions every single day. I'm not feeling motivated. I'm in the wrong frame. So instead of solving those emotions, you shift to a frame that is aligned,
Mm.
and
Okay.
that will generate the mindset automatically. And a big part of this is like there's actually a framework that I've created on how to operate this way and hit impossible goals. But the foundation is like the basics. Like you have
Mhm.
to understand. Like when I'm talking to new people, I have to educate them on what this is before they can do it.
Right.
And right now, this conversation I'm having with you is already creating a frame shift in you, right? Because you're starting to think a little bit differently about how life works.
Yeah, well, I feel like I'm trying to take it that step up, and I'm no longer thinking mindset. I'm thinking frame, and it's like, okay, I'm sometimes over the holidays, right? Like a lot of depression happens and whatever, and so
Yeah.
it's okay. Like, how do I rewire, right, to make that happen? And sometimes for me, it's like I'll just go for a run, or I'll just get outside, or I'll just like pump some weight, or
Mhm.
whatever, and I feel like that puts me in a better mood. So would that be
Mhm.
like an actionable item to frame shift, or am I still thinking on a mindset level?
Well, it depends. Well, there is an emotional reaction too, right? So
Hmm.
a lot of times what's happening when people are having those patterns, they're having triggers that are causing that, right?
Hmm.
So they're literally having a reaction to life. For
Hmm.
example, right? They a reaction to the present moment, right? And a
Hmm.
simple example is like if you're in a relationship and you have a fight with your partner and you're mad and pissed off, you're probably not going to make the best decisions, right? So you
Hmm.
got to cool off. The
Hmm.
same thing with your emotions, right? So if you are in reaction or you're feeling frustrated or angry or sad or whatever, simply giving yourself space to process the emotions and the energy will get you out of reaction, and then you can shift, because if you are in emotional reaction, you can't shift frames.
Right, right.
That's why
That's
running is so good, because you're taking the time to process the energy.
yeah, and I think stepping away from things that will distract you, right? Like, stepping away from your phone. Like it's hard to run and text. right?
Yeah.
I love to work out without music, and I love to
Mhm.
work out just like in my own head, because
Mhm.
for me that's just like my meditative state. Right? I'll go for a run. I'll lift weights, and people I feel like look at me like I'm crazy because I don't have these big headphones on. But it's
Yeah.
just I don't know. That feels so good. Um, and so,
Yeah.
Jason, you've created a coaching business, right? That is pretty much like I feel like it's top tier. It's probably one of the most popular coaching businesses, maybe outside of like Tony Robbins and all this, but especially within the real estate community and Bigger Pockets, Go Abundance. And so, talk about like I want to go back a little bit and talk about that shift you had, because like race car suits to coaching is like
Yeah.
nothing is similar, right? And so, what got you into the coaching? So, just because your coach said, but how did you even know to hire
It
a
was
coach, right? Like, where did that transition
well,
happen?
first started listening to Tony Robbins content in like 2002, 2003. I bought like Personal Power,
Mhm.
listened to that, and then I've got a flyer, and then I called in for a free session one day in 2010, and that's what started coaching. But it was really, and I liked coaching. I thought it was great. I went to a couple events, but then in that day in 2012, when he asked me if I've ever thought about becoming a coach, I was like, I literally felt like I got struck by lightning. I was like, that's what I'm supposed to do with my life.
Wow.
And it was the first time in my life I remember being excited to learn something.
Yeah.
I was like thinking, I don't care how long it takes, I'm going to become a coach
Wow. And
because
so,
because yeah, just like boom.
did you have any sort of imposter syndrome, right? Because you kind of had a business that failed, and now you're going to become a
Yeah.
coach. And so, like, I mean, I think that's a real thing.
Yeah, me, no, not really. I never really get imposter syndrome. That's just my
Mm,
personality style.
that's good.
There's part of the coaching process you do have to deal, right? I guess there's a little bit of the imposter syndrome came up when I was learning how to coach.
Hmm.
A couple calls where you're like muting them, going, "Oh my god, what the fuck am I doing?" Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I was basically, well, life brought me the two of us together, and it's going to work or it's not. So might as well give it all I've got. So
Amazing, amazing. And so, let's start about like the inception of this coaching business, because it sounds like you're just doing it part time to start.
yeah,
What did it look like in the beginning? Because I think that's the fun stuff, right? That's when things are kind of sloppy and you got to be kind of scrappy, and then
yeah.
obviously it grows. But
It was well, yeah. Like so, I started coaching in 2013 with Tony Robbins. I didn't actually start getting clients till the end of that year. And at the same time, I was like, let's start my own coaching business. Um, so I basically was going to the Chamber of Commerce and networking to get clients,
wow,
and
people
that's
still go
kind
to
of what
that.
people do.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
a lot of small businesses do, and that's where I went to get clients, and I work there. So Jason Drees Coaching has actually existed for over 10 years, close to 10 years now. And then I worked at Robbins, and then I left Robbins in 2016 and took a job with one of my clients that lasted about 3 months, and that didn't work. And then I started an outsourcing company in the Philippines after that,
Oh wow,
and ran that for 2 years, and then that didn't work. And then I had another job, and then JDC took off.
wow. So really, it sounds like what happened is just like JDC was your passion project for like 5 years, and you were doing these other kind of one-off jobs to just basically probably pay your bills.
Yeah.
And so what happened? Like, what was that inflection point, and why stay with it for? So you stayed with it because you loved it, is what it sounds like, and so it wasn't
I
even feel like
loved it.
work.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I wanted to be a full-time coach. That was my goal, but I'm like, to be a full-time coach and make the money I want, I have to be a standout coach. And I didn't know how to do
Yeah.
that. So
Right.
and it was like, I didn't want to go back to tech sales. It was like, I'll do whatever it takes. And that's why the whole outsourcing company started, which was like kept me afloat for a year and a half with income, but it was just like a bad direction. But I just didn't want to go back to working for somebody else. That's why.
I love that. Yeah. And so 2016 happens, and there's a big inflection in your business. Like, let's talk about that. What happened? Like, it sounds like you struck gold.
Yeah. Well, the big inflection actually was in 2019.
Okay.
I was working this. I forget. I had a job that didn't work. The outsourcing company stopped, and I was working with two partners to start this business coaching company called Excel Business Coaching. And then me and a salesperson were cold calling and doing webinars and social media, like full time. And in 6 months, we didn't close one coaching contract. It was like,
Wow.
and I'm literally like, what is going on here? And that's when I really like had this business is over. I have to get a job. It's putting too much stress on my family. And I like cried. I'm like, the dream is over. And then I hung up, went to bed. And then literally over the next month, referrals started coming out of nowhere. And I was like, what just happened? Because I grinded as hard as I could for 6 months and it didn't work. But the second I quit, it starts flowing. And that was kind of the foundation of my search to understand what alignment was. Because when I was chasing that result so hard, I was actually really focused on it and wanting it. And wanting is actually the lack of it, right?
So people could recognize that. Like
if you're in a place of wanting,
and the body language you were
you're
doing,
actually in the present frequency of not having it. So that often turns into release of resistance when you quit, because quitting is I don't care. Wanting is I want it, but it's not there. So basically you're saying I don't have it, I don't have it, I don't have it. I don't care is actually a better place to be than I don't have it. Right. And then it started flowing in and I was like, holy cow, wait a second, I just got 4 contracts.
Yeah. So is that because you kind of sounded maybe desperate on your webinars, or you like, and it's hard to hide that, right? It's hard to act out of that, or, paid ads. It's like, okay, like you need something. And so if you need it real bad, it's almost like, well, people's kind of walls go up, right?
Yeah. What I really believe though, is that life wanted my name on the door. And the other company didn't have my name. It was called Excel Business Coaching. It wasn't called Jason Drees Coaching. So Jason Drees Coaching was on the door, then it starts to work.
Okay. And so the referrals started picking up, right? And it's
not
funny.
yet. Yeah. I was coaching. That was the middle of 2019. I had been coaching Brandon for a year and a half. I didn't even know who he was.
Yeah.
And then the interesting thing is we would have these coaching calls and he'd be like, oh, well, we should do an Instagram Live. I'm like, okay, great. And he was my paying client, so I wasn't going to follow him up to start marketing me. And like it happened probably 2 or 3 times, and I'm like, oh, he just doesn't follow through.
Yeah.
And then it was October 2019, and when I realized the reason he wasn't following up with me is because I wasn't a high enough financial mindset to work with him.
So, and I explain that a little more.
I realized that he was at a higher I don't even know how I had these thoughts. So this is part of my process is I get these really interesting breakthroughs of my process. But I realized that I needed to raise my financial frequency in order to work with him. My financial mindset wasn't high enough because I was living in financial scarcity and I was struggling to get out of financial scarcity. And I found this book called Being You, Changing the World by Dane Heer. He has a study of what's called access consciousness, and within that is a belief change tool. Like my repeat after me's are belief change tools. So before I discovered that, I used his book and I did his financial mindset. He also has a book called Money Isn't the Problem, You Are. And I did he's got these money exercises or questions, I forget what they were, but I did those every day for like 3 weeks. And then the next week we have a coaching call with Brandon, late October 2019. We have a coaching call. At the end of the call, he's like, we should do an Instagram Live. I'm like, yep. And I wasn't expecting anything. The next day, his assistant calls me up and scheduled it.
Wow.
And then we did the Instagram Live in the middle of November. And then literally I started getting 5 clients a month.
Wow.
Boom, boom,
yeah.
Boom, boom, boom,
and then it just trickles from there, right? Once you've got that big enough referral, it's just like in real estate too. Like once you've got enough clients, it ends up just being, oh, hey, and you do a good job, right? Like, one thing. So my dad, right? he was a chef, right? A blue collar guy, and cooked really, really good food. And they had a really successful catering company. And basically it was, he says, good food will always prevail, right? And so good service will always prevail. A good product will always prevail because referrals are the best source of business, of lead generation. Like you did 6 months of cold calls and webinars and all that, and you didn't net 1 client, but now they're just flowing in. And so, obviously, I think it's funny. Like I always make this joke that whatever Brandon touches turns to gold. And I think there's some truth in that. And so you're getting these referrals come in, and then it was just a snowball from there. Right? You got on Bigger Pockets, you got in the Go Abundance community.
Yeah, it was like, and then I was on the Bigger Pockets podcast, and that was August of 2020. And prior to that, Jason Drees Coaching was just me. And I had just started to get the part where it was like, I think I was looking at an assistant to help me because I couldn't do it. But basically prior to that, it was just me. And I was doing maybe 15 to 20 introductory coaching sessions a month. The next month after the podcast, we had 192 intro sessions booked.
Wow.
So Jason Drees Coaching went from just me to me and 3 coaches and operations and sales within 2 months.
Wow. And so how do you scale that quick? And how do you, there must have been some growing pains there. There must have,
However you can, because Jason Drees Coaching in 2019 did 100K, and in 2020 we did $1 million. Wow. And 70% of that was in Q4.
Wow.
So I actually had people reach out to me. They're like, Jason, you don't look so good, because the big bags under my eyes during Q4.
Yeah.
It was like so amazing. I'm just like, don't screw it up, don't screw it up, don't screw it up, you know?
Yeah.
It was just handle it however I could, because that's also when we launched the Mindset Academy. So we basically just exploded into it. Went from like 50 to 150, 200 clients in like 60 days.
Wow, that's incredible. You gotta love that. And so, what does it take to hire coaches, right? Because there must be something like you've been coaching for 10 years. Now you're going to hire a coach that maybe has some experience, but not nearly as much as you. And so, was there a worry of that you were lacking quality as you scaled, or anything like that?
There was, because my option was, I can put out a red little velvet rope and say, you want to coach me, this how much it costs, or I can get other coaches, right? And I knew that there were no other coaches. Nobody was coaching at the level I was. So I brought on coaches that I knew could coach. I knew they're highly skilled. I knew they could deliver quality coaching, even if it doesn't match everything I did. And over the past 2 years has been the process of trying to figure out how to teach what I do, because I've got at a level of proficiency that I don't even know what I'm doing. And it's a paradigm shift. So a lot of the early on coaches were JDC clients were getting Tony Robbins coaching experiences, because that's where all the coaches came from.
Right.
So that's why we've been evolving the content, and that's why I created Mindset Academy to kind of push that out. We have the DTI framework now, the principles. So that's been the challenge, is how do we get that in there? Because it's literally operating at a higher level of consciousness.
Yeah, I love that. Tell us what's this Mindset Academy that you're talking about? Is that? Yeah.
The Mindset Academy is a group coaching program. So the group coaching program. So Jason Drees Coaching does one-on-one coaching where you can talk with a coach a few times a month. And then group coaching is like a one-to-many program where we deliver structured content to kind of put the fundamentals in place.
I see. So, if you don't have, this is me I'm assuming here that the Mindset Academy is probably a smaller buy-in. So, if the thousands of dollars a month is maybe too much for you at this time, you start there and then eventually you work your way up to that one-on-one coaching, because it is true. I think everybody needs a coach, like they say, right? Like Tiger Woods is the best golfer. Well, I guess maybe not anymore, but he was the best golfer in the world at one point, and he still had a coach, right? Because there's always some mechanics that you can, that you can keep improving. And so, absolutely. Jason, man, you've built a machine. You've built kind of like an empire here of coaching. What's next for you?
What's next? Next is not killing myself.
No more bags into your eyes, man. Get your 8 hours.
Yeah. Because last year was basically what happened in 2019, 2020 and 2021, didn't matter what I did. We just grew. There's so much business came in. 2020 was a different animal, and it was an interesting problem, because Jason Drees Coaching had gotten 95% of our business out of referral. And then when that slowed down, we needed to figure out our own leads generation and stuff like that. So that's why we've had a big shift in that. So really my goals right now is to get myself into a place of alignment, so I'm living and balanced how I want to be, because it hasn't been way past year.
Yeah. And so what are some of those ways that you're kind of, if the referrals start drying up, what is your secondary source of lead gen? Because that's a good point.
Yeah, well, we didn't know what the funnel was, right? And trying to figure out the funnel was a hard time, because it was something I struggled with as a one-on-one. Even when I was at my old coaching business, I struggled with that, right? When it was just me. But I finally figured out that you got to do a podcast. So I started to do the Impossible podcast. It's been running 3 months now. We're up to episode 30. Then we're doing the Monday Mindset Reset Call, which is a free 20-minute call every Monday. So we've got now a formula of what the business needs to operate and how I need to operate in the business. Because for the first 2 years, I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Right.
And now I'm like, oh my God. So I would advise anybody to funnels matter, right? Funnels matter, and put the foundation in place. Because right now I'm going through a little bit of the basics of how to run the business, because it was so easy to run it before. It didn't matter what I did.
Right. Yeah.
So it's analyzing the numbers isn't my great thing, but my strength, but I need to learn how to do that. Right.
Yeah. It's funny, we're kind of running through the same thing, right? Where it's I did over 100 deals my first year as a real estate agent. Right. And I did that because I wrote for 2 years on the Bigger Pockets blog for free, and then wrote the house hacking book. Right. And that gave me the reputation of oh, hey, this guy's probably knows a thing or two about house hacking, about real estate investing, can coach, guide, and mentor me through the process.
Yeah.
Now the team is starting to grow, right? And those leads, I mean, they're still good, but as the team grows, you need to keep funneling leads to them. And so now we're like, oh crap, we need to open up a new source. So if all your leads, if you're doing a business and all of your leads and all of your clients are coming from one source, you got to diversify, right? Like if that source dries up, you're screwed. And so that's something that people don't really see. And I think, I don't know, maybe we're both going through the same pains. But it's incredible. And what you're building here, it just makes sense, right? You're adding value in a free way with the podcast. Again, getting them to your Monday Mindset recalls, which is also free. And I suspect on those calls, you're like, oh, hey, if you want more of this at a deeper level, you go into the Mindset Academy, and then they graduate into your coaching. And so that again, it's a beautiful funnel, and that's how you have to think of business.
Yeah. And it took me 2 years to figure that out. Right. It really did.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing about lead generation, I had a big breakthrough about lead generation. And I realized that the reason Brandon is so amazing at it is because he's amazing at communicating with his audience.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all really lead generation is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's talking to your audience. So as I've had that breakthrough last month, so one of my focuses right now in the path that I literally created a new lightning bolt moment, like I'm consciously choosing one, like this new path I'm walking is to master communication with my audience. Because if I can master audience communication like Brandon, I'll never worry about money again.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah. Being relatable, not being too like uptight and sticky. And, Brandon, I feel like everyone is friends with him. Right. And it's just because like he is just that likable and that good. And he's a great, role model to model business after. All right, Jason, we are coming down to the final part of the show. But before we get there, I want to ask you if you have any parting words of wisdom for the listeners.
I would say go after, like, start your own business. Like I've been exposed to probably 1,000 small business owners in my career over the past 15 to 20 years. And the only difference between the ones that have started a business and the ones haven't is they started a business. Mm-hmm. So start a business, take action, and just stick to it. And if it doesn't work, pivot and keep going.
Yeah. And it could pivot from, race car cooling suits to coaching, right? You never know how the pivots happen, but you just have to pursue the opportunities to unlock more opportunities.
100%.
Okay. All right. Now it is time for the final four.
The final
way less
four.
Fun doing that without Z here. All right. All right, Jason, what is the book you are reading right now? And do you like it?
I'm actually not reading any books right now.
You're not reading any books right now. It's January, man. You didn't have a New Year's resolution to read more?
I don't read a lot of books. No.
Okay, what's your favorite book?
Favorite book? Let's see. Probably The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho.
Okay.
That one's good. I love that book. Also, Untethered Soul by Michael Singer is really good. Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. Those were the books that kind of set my consciousness free.
Okay. I love that. All right, Jason, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I've ever received. I don't know the answer to that. I think the best piece of advice I'm telling right now is be careful, be who you do business with. That, who you surround yourself with matters. And follow your gut, right? Because if that person is the right person to be around, and you also know the right way. I've kind of passed all the advice I've got.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, honestly, people being able to discern the good people from the bad people is probably the most valuable skill in business that you could have. Mm-hmm. Okay, third question. What is your why?
My why? I don't really have a why. Like, why do I do what I do? Like,
what gets you up
really
in the morning?
about what's that? What gets me up in the morning?
Yeah.
I love exploring what's possible. Mm-hmm. Like, I love seeing what's possible. I haven't really set goals, but I just love to see what's possible. That's why I wrote a book on doing the impossible, because I just love pushing the capacity of growth and expansion. So that's really my why: growth and expansion.
It's like the David Goggins of business, David Goggins tests his physical body to see how far he can go. You test your, your business body, your mindset. Yeah, see how far that can go. All right, Jason. So last semi-serious question. If you were arrested with no explanation, what would your friends and family assume that you had done?
I don't know. The thing that popped into my head was bank fraud. I don't know why, but
bank fraud.
I don't know if that's actually the case, but What would they think? Maybe driving my new side by side illegally. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, off-roading too much. Yeah,
off-roading on my illegal, unlicensed
private
vehicle
property.
on the street.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool, Jason. So where can people find out more about you if they wanted to do the Mindset Academy or join your weekly calls? How might somebody want to do that?
The easiest way is go to MondayMindsetReset.com. If you go there, you can sign up for my link for the Monday call. You can also find me on the Do the Impossible podcast. That's probably a good place to listen to.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely check out his podcast, Do the Impossible. MondayMindsetReset.com. Is that what you said?
That's right.
Okay.
MondayMindsetReset.com.
Awesome. Definitely go check out Jason's stuff. He's one of a kind. Any last words before we head out for the evening?
Don't stop. Keep going.
Don't stop. Keep going. Love it.
Keep going.
Yeah. Awesome, Jason. Thanks so much for coming on the show. This was such an enlightening episode, and definitely, I won't say a mindset shift, but a frame shift, which is not something you hear every day. So, Jason, thanks again so much for coming on, man. It was a pleasure having you, and we'll be in touch. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.
And that was Jason Drees. Man, that dude is a wealth of knowledge. You can tell that he's like a derivation of Tony Robbins, right? He talks a lot about psychology and consciousness and kind of just being aware of how the mind works and being able to not just shift your mindset, right, but totally shift your frame. And that concept of frame shifting, again, is something I've never heard of before. And so I was legitimately learning on this call with Jason. Because, the frame happens before the mindset, right? And so if you shift your frame, then your mindset shifts, then your emotions shift, then your actions shift, and then you kind of change your life, right? And so there's a lot to uncover here, much more than we could in the 45 minutes to an hour that we have. But if you haven't already, sign up for Jason's Mindset Academy. Sign up for, go take a listen to his podcast and see if you might like it. And if you ever find yourself in a rut, right? If things feel boring to you, if they feel heavy, you don't want to make those cold calls. You don't want to make that Instagram post. You don't want to screen those tenants or do your due diligence. Call that prior landlord to actually, do the diligence on the tenant, right? Make sure you do that stuff and shift your mindset, right? I think so important, right? And I just love to hear his stories of failure, right? How his first business literally almost went bankrupt. He got sued. I then started coaching as a failed business person, and that took almost 10 years before really taking off, right? He started coaching in 2010. 2019 is when it really started taking off. So there's a persistence factor there too. Like if you keep pushing at something, the only way that you fail is if you quit. He never quitted, and now he's got, one of the bigger coaching companies out there. So a lot to take from this episode, guys. If you like this episode, please share it with your friends, share it with your family. Please leave us a rating and review on iTunes. It helps us so much to grow the show, and we just love seeing your feedback. If you haven't already added me on Instagram, I'm at the Fi Guy. Ziana is at Ziana McIntyre, and we look forward to seeing you there. All right, guys, we'll talk to you all next week.
That's it for this episode of Investify. We hope that these nuggets of real estate wisdom lead to more savvy financial planning and a clearer path towards financial freedom. For more content like this, subscribe to the show at investify.com. Don't forget to leave a rating and share it with your friends. Together, we can transform more real estate newbies into successful and clever investors. Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next one.